Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Junction Podcast. I'm your host, Uza.
I am Joseph. Welcome.
Here we talk about all things relating to agriculture and the economy. So stick with us. Joseph, what's been happening? What's been going on? How are you feeling?
Doing good. Doing great. Could do better,
Of course.
but yeah, we thank God. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was okay. I mean, given the current state of things, I think it was all right. But I couldn't stop thinking about how I read somewhere that Indonesia has used palm oil to replace
Yes.
jet fuel, and
Yeah. That was like 2 days back. It made the news. Indonesia, fun enough, actually came to Nigeria to take palm oil seedlings, some years back, many years ago.
Yeah.
And today, Indonesia happens to be the largest producer of palm oil in the world.
That's crazy.
It doesn't even stop there. They've gone a step further. Innovative ideas of using palm oil to actually fly a jet, mix it with jet fuel, about some percentage of palm oil. So actually what we're looking at now is a lot of people who are trying to diversify their economy, reduce reliance on fossil fuels, are finding alternatives with some of all these things that we actually have in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking that we had all of these all along, and it didn't occur to us to, use that as an innovative idea to solve some of our eco problems. But here we have Indonesia taking the lead in that regard. So it's a good one for Indonesia, but it's almost
It makes us
yeah.
I guess it makes me just kind of, it makes us look at ourselves where exactly are we headed as a nation? And there's so much potential. I mean, it's not just with palm oil. There's a lot of
there's
things.
there's even cassava. There's biodiesel you could get from cassava as well. So cassava can be used to make cassava ethanol, and cassava paper, a number of products, packaging and utensils. This is the way to go, going forward when we're talking about eco-friendly solutions. And I think Nigeria needs to take a cue from some of all these.
Yeah, especially because having them coming here in the 18th or 19th century to actually get the seeds, and it's not just Indonesia. I think Malaysia got rubber from
Thailand,
us.
yes.
Yeah, and they're all
Rubber.
doing great things right now.
Fantastically, they are doing wonderful things with all of these things. And Nigeria, the lodestone where they get all of these things from happens to just be dwelling in the doldrums of of productivity. I don't know why it is like that, but hopefully, I think this is the reason why we have these and other podcasts, centered around agriculture, to try to address some of all these challenges, see how we can innovatively, solve some of our country's problems with some of the natural resources that we do have.
And luckily today we have a guest that's going to advise us about more about the agricultural space in Nigeria. He's an expert in the field. He's also a financial expert, and he's the CEO and founder of AgroMall. So help me welcome Femi Adeniyi.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. How we do it is a big round of applause for the big masquerade.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
Wow.
In between such wonderful people talking about agriculture.
Yes.
Thanks for
it
making
is our
the
pleasure
time.
having you, sir.
Yeah.
You want to do the introductions?
So can you tell us a bit about AgroMall, what you do, and what inspired you to start the company?
Okay, I would start from what inspired me to start the company. I am an agricultural economist by training, and also an agricultural extensionist. So funny that I did not want to study agriculture because my parents wanted me to study medicine, whereas they believe I'm smart. and I wanted to study everything, every week I had something new that I wanted to study when I was younger. It ranged from being a helicopter pilot to owning a bar in the Caribbean. But I found myself studying agriculture, and I think in 200 level or 300 level, I took a course called rural sociology, and also the business part of agriculture, and I really loved it. Even though I had to struggle through the first 2 years, but in 300 level, I took those courses that were very practical, and exposed me and opened me to the excitement, in agriculture, especially around meeting people in the rural settings, the farmers, and all. Then flashback to maybe when I was in secondary school. One of my friends, his dad who's late now, used to work for the Agricultural Development Program. That was a World Bank funded program in Nigeria, and they had very beautiful SUVs, and all that. So I thought like, I would love to be, have one of these. So that was why that was my foundation for agriculture, and made me have some residual understanding and appreciation of agriculture. Then fast forward, I served at an agricultural development program in Ebonyi State. I did a few things there, even though that program was already on its way out at that time. Then I got into organized private sector, worked in a bank, worked in some FMCGs, which is fast moving consumer goods. Then I also worked with the World Bank, and then at some point I started putting together the ideas around AgroMall, especially, and that was when digital technology was really taking off. So the whole idea was, how can we apply digital technology to optimize agriculture and also optimize finance? And then we started AgroMall, and here we are.
Wow, interesting. A very, very interesting introduction. I'm really piqued by the fact that you mentioned that you actually got to study agriculture as is it a later choice? Would you call that a later choice? Because you didn't get into university because you wanted to study agriculture initially.
I did actually. Okay. So I was admitted into the university to study agricultural economics and extension.
Yes. Okay, so fantastic. And then along the line, as you went through schooling and everything, you must have noticed certain challenges, especially with the Nigerian agriculture sector, that you felt probably with your training and educational experience and everything, you might be able to, find solutions to. Which particular, or what are those particular challenges that you felt that you could bring innovative solutions to? Talking about Nigerian agricultural sector.
Okay, thank you. When I went to school, Nigeria didn't have plenty of challenges like this. we were balling. Let me use language, but obviously, things were not also optimal, and that was why you had programs like the Agricultural Development Program to support agriculture. But in retrospect, I can say that a challenge that was maybe latent at that point was the fact that young people were not interested in agriculture, which also kind of affected me because I didn't want to study agriculture, However, so that could have been a challenge that maybe the policymaker could have seen, but as a student, it wasn't open to me because I believe there was food and all that, and there wasn't that much information then. The internet was not as mainstream as these, and social media for things like that to come. So those challenges were not really obvious then. However, let me turn that around a little bit. Rather than challenges, I found a lot of excitement. In agriculture, I found excitement, especially in the applied part of it. In 100 level, 200 level, 300 level, most of the things that you did were very abstract and theoretical. Like your general studies, physics, mathematics, and English. Then from maybe 300 level to 300 level, you started going to the farms. Then you started working on business planning, feasibility studies, because I studied agricultural economics and extension, and also working on things like rural sociology, where you met people and all that. So those were very exciting times for me, because they were applied and I could see,
the effects
or an application or manifestation of the things that I was learning. And that was just how a very strong appreciation of agriculture was built in me.
So, currently, how is AgroMall using technology to help farmers and other stakeholders in the agricultural sector?
Good question, because I always equate technology to frying things. Some people may crucify me for this, fit farm, healthy people. But if you noticed, like whatever it is you fry, I think it becomes sweeter. If you take plantain and you fry, it becomes good. That is very sweet. If you take flour and fry
is that your favorite?
It becomes puff. Even yam, boiled yam, if you fry it, it becomes do and it's sweeter.
Exactly.
So I've always seen tech as that oil that when you apply it becomes fried and it becomes better, enhanced. And from my career progression, I also started working a lot in technology, and then later the intersection of technology with finance, with agriculture, and that created AgroMall in my mind. So the first thing that when we were building AgroMall at the beginning, the concept was like Uber for agriculture, which is on demand. Being able to use digital technology to find whatever it is you require, for agriculture, being inbuilt, majorly inbuilt in information. Then later I expanded to, community, expanded to knowledge, practice, ERP, and that built us. At the beginning, we knew that bringing technology into agriculture had to be layered on strong partnerships, and because we targeted smallholder farmers, and that was deliberate because they do about 80-90% of Nigeria's agriculture, but we also knew that they cannot afford technology, or they may not be able to appreciate it as much. So we decided to work with developmental partners, funny, I was coming from development as well, from the World Bank. So, the World Bank, CBN, EFDB types. So we approached a number of them. It took 2 years, to make the first one, want to work with us. And then we started working with the first one of them, and it was a very funny story. I was actually in London attending a course in development, and I was called back to Nigeria. I should get on the next plane. And on that plane, somebody just told me that this trip, maybe it was on that, you will never forget it. Wow. So I got to Nigeria, and I can't remember if I took my shower. I just went for the meeting because and the rest is history, because that was actually what propelled AgroMall to what it is today. And so we did. First, it was just profiling farmers. But beyond them, we started mapping and geotagging their lands. Then we started building, systems that could monitor and evaluate their work. And also, we started building systems like calendarized extension that would provide to them extension services, on demand or using technology. Then building systems that would support their harvest, inventory management, their payments. So we've evolved into that kind of ERP and other capacities, capabilities that technology enhances that supports a farmer from end to end. And we've done this with over 1 million farmers.
Wow.
Going forward, I've also, looking back to my early beginnings when I was in school, whereas I was able to appreciate agriculture, I also think that there is something there for the young people in agricultural majors, in Nigeria. I think there are about 120,000 of them. So we are deliberately building systems, for them to help them appreciate agriculture and also engage agriculture profitably.
That's very, very interesting. I was, thinking when you mentioned it, you said it came from development. There is just an aside. It doesn't mean that Nigeria is not developed in that light. Anyway, but AgroMall.
Before you,
yes, please.
Before Nigerians hear you,
you said you were coming. You said you were coming from
what it means is that the development is like an industry.
I do understand.
So
yes.
the organizations like World Bank, AFDB, they are like developmental organizations. So that's what I meant.
Of course. Yes. Then when you look at there's this comparison, that was made between agricultural land in developed societies and what we have here. How what we have here is more or less like still borders on peasant farming kind of structure as regards in comparison with mechanized farming. But before we delve into that, I want to just take you a little bit back to the formation of AgroMall, especially with regards to the name AgroMall. When I first encountered AgroMall as a name, I expected that it would be like, so you walk into a place and you have agricultural products and everything, and then you've mentioned something about a vision that takes it even further than where you started. So, first of all, how did you come about the name AgroMall? And if you eventually take the company to those heights, do you see the name change do you see a name change in order to encompass the other added, levels that the company has attained going forward?
Yeah, really, thank you for that. And but when we envisaged AgroMall and also created the name, the mall component was not a literary mall, like a shopping mall or even an online mall.
Sadly,
it was the idea is, like if you go into a mall, you are able to find diverse things, products, services, and all that. So we just wanted that thing, for agriculture, where you are able to find services,
all the solutions, everything,
products. So that's the meaning of the mall, the idea behind it.
So
and we don't see the need to change
it. Okay.
Because,
Yes. The idea. Yes, I now see.
Right.
This is not. I guess it's not the first agro-tech company in Nigeria. What stands AgroMall out apart from the others? Like, what is the core driving vision that will make you, stand and say, yes, this is going to outlive even any competition for as long as it's going to take?
Thank you for that question. At the core of AgroMall is making farmers prosperous, and prosperity is dynamic. The path to prosperity is dynamic. I think prosperity maybe at the beginning of the century or the 20th century would be maybe owning maybe a small industry, a small cottage industry, for example, or maybe being a farmer, or having a factory and all of that. But today, if you fast forward to today, prosperity could be, you just being in your room and writing codes and building software.
Yeah.
So it evolves. But the uniform and the underlying factor for both, for both extremes over a century is that there is prosperity and it's creating prosperity. So AgroMall is really focused on creating prosperity, through agriculture. And doing that, we are always innovating, we are always changing, we are always evolving to adapt ourselves, one, to understand the needs, two, to also create solutions, and three, to apply those solutions with the overarching aim of making sure people that are connected to us, especially farmers and others in the agricultural value chain, derive prosperity.
I just wanted to say that I actually really like the name AgroMall. You seem to be very good at coming up with these names. The Junction, Farm Tinder.
Right.
Are these your ideas? Do you come up with this, or do you Google all these ideas before you come up with the name or something?
Honestly, I come up with a lot of them.
Okay, wow.
Funny, I didn't come up with Farm Tinder.
Okay.
But most of the other ones I came up with them. So And I also consider myself a creative. So
Yeah,
Okay,
I
yes.
forgot to say that, guys. Femi is actually a writer and an explorer. On that later.
You might still find success with the batting in the Caribbean too.
Yeah.
As well, you know.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, we touched on just crops that we naturally have here, but
Yes.
underdeveloped either because of lack of funding going into agriculture research, insecurity, and things like that. So in June, I think the government declared a state of emergency here. What are the impacts you felt from the government since that declaration, and or would you say it's too early to feel those impacts? So are inputs cheaper? Are there more subsidies? Along things like that, like from your own perspective.
yeah. So and that's a good question, Uzoma, because with what is happening in the economy today, food prices skyrocketing, and people looking to be engaged economically, especially young people. It's important to ask these questions. It's also very early in the administration, but I would approach the answer to that from two dimensions. One, as an industry expert and stakeholder that's been following, the government's pronouncements, been exposed to their strategy, to their agenda, and also seeing what the Minister of Agriculture has come up with as focus areas. So I think we should be hopeful, and it's looking like the government is really looking, bringing strategy from the cloud, and then situating it, bringing it to the ground where it can hit the ground and can translate to something, for farmers, all the participants in the value chain, and also to the consumers of food and other agricultural produce. So yes, there's things to be hopeful about. Coming to the interventions and the food emergency and all, those pronouncements were made around June, July, and that is deep into the wet season.
Okay.
So it can't really translate to anything because we are largely rain-fed agriculture.
True.
So plants are done in April, May for some time, So June we are already within, the calendar. But there's also the dry season farming, which is supported by irrigation, even though we're not very optimal then. I know that there are a lot of programs that have been created for that. There's the wheat program, which has been announced by the Honorable Minister of Agriculture. There's the rice program, and we expect that this, when they happen, you will not see the impact in the market for another maybe 4 months or thereabouts. But when that happens, then we can expect that food prices will ease, and then and we hopefully will be able to appreciate those and build on those.
Okay. So better days ahead. Okay.
I believe so.
Hopefully. Okay, so fantastic. So we're still here with our guests, and we're still talking about some very, very important issues in Nigeria's agricultural sector. And what better guest to have on the program today than the smart agri entrepreneur, CEO and founder of AgroMall, Mr. Femi Adeniyi. Thank you again. It's a pleasure having you here.
It's a pleasure being here.
But I was trying to just find out exactly how the subventions or interventions or whatever that the government actually has, especially with regards to the state of emergency that was declared, exactly how much of this goes to the very people who I think should, because your company says your goal is to empower the farmers. The same thing, I believe, is what the government, has as their policy. Yet, I don't know how much of all of these support goes down to the smallholder farmer, especially who are in the rural areas, who are not within reach of, WhatsApp and all of these technology to get them.
Yeah, good question and something to really think about. But I would try to create some context, and differentiate between two critical components of an agricultural industry in a country or a market like Nigeria.
Okay.
So, though you have the agriculture ministry, which to me, the major work that they should do is things around policy.
Okay.
So what should we plant? Should we adopt genetically modified organisms? Do we, how the overarching structure policies to make sure that framework to make sure that there is participation in agriculture, and also that it is safe.
Good.
And it is, to a large extent, the participants are guaranteed some kind of livelihood and protection, which is the role of the Ministry of Agriculture. There's also the part of agriculture that is required to finance the industry.
Okay.
And that is still the primary objective or the primary responsibility. No, maybe not the primary responsibility, but it's a responsibility to the financial sector.
Okay.
So, for example, when we were discussing earlier, you mentioned that the budget for agriculture is about 250 billion naira.
Yes.
If we use the
That is the highest
ever. So if we use the exchange rate,
true,
today at the parallel market, or even the NAFEX, which is at close to 1,000 naira to the dollar, that means you have $250 million, for this sector, which employs about 30 to 70 million Nigerians, cultivates about 30 million hectares, and produces, is supposed to feed all of us, 300 million people. That's $250 million US. And the value of this segment, this sector, which is also the highest contributor to
national GDP,
to the GDP at like 24-25%. If we use the last GDP numbers at around $400 billion, that means the industry is worth $100 billion. So imagine that you are using $250 million to support a $100 billion industry.
Goes nowhere.
So it just shows, and we need to start thinking about it like this. So when you ascribe all of that responsibility to the Ministry of Agriculture that you only give to 50 million, and you out of a 1 billion, 100 billion, we are consuming 100 billion, and you think 50 million is going to do it, So we over ascribe responsibility to those ministries. Whereas to finance and to get the real impact that we're talking about must come from the financial sector that must invest in agriculture. And the government, through a number of instrumentalities, have tried to support this. So through organizations or parastatals, MDs like the Bank of Agriculture, for example, the Bank of Industry, for example, NISA, which is the Nigeria incentive-based risk-sharing program, which is meant to guarantee credit coming from banks. Then the NAIC, the National Agricultural Insurance Company. These are all, structures that are put together or that are created to create like a solid foundation, like tripods, to carry agriculture, so that people that have money like you and Uzoma that is just playing around can put it in NAI, so that NAI can lend to a farmer. So that money is not going to come from Ministry of Agriculture. Agriculture can just tell us that plant maize or plant rice or trypanosomiasis is coming, or there's this disease. This is how you treat it in Nigeria, so that our food can be safe. But that impact that you're looking for, that will guarantee food security and all of that, must come from financing agriculture.
So they have to come from private partners.
It's a combination. It's just how the bank works, So this should, for example, the Bank of Agriculture should be able. The Bank of Agriculture in Nigeria is I don't even know if it has any value at this point, or it is underperforming to a large extent. And I'll tell you why. During my honeymoon, a long time ago, not too long, I was in Malaysia, and I walked past the Bank of Agriculture of Malaysia, I had to look up, to see the end of the building.
Yeah.
So because I was in agriculture, so I was interested. When I went back to study that bank, I saw that it is capitalized at around $9 billion.
Whoa.
That's probably bigger than any bank in Nigeria. That's their bank of agriculture. Imagine how many farmers they have. What's the population of the whole Malaysia is about 33 million. Our own farmer population is about 70 million. So like the bank of agriculture in Nigeria should be valued at capitalized at about $50 billion. When there's a $50 billion and the industry is 100 billion, what that means is that 50 billion you can leverage it times 5, so it can have about 25 billion to 50 billion to put into Femi Uzoma's venture and all that, and we start doing what we need to do. Then beyond that, there's also the insurance. When money is flowing, the insurance will be flowing. So we look too much at the ministry, and it's because the way Nigeria is designed. If you're in government, you're a big man and all that. But the system that should support agriculture is more of a financing, because money must create money. So that would be my answer to your question. So all of those interventions, for example, the Anchor Borrower program, is very controversial.
Yes, it is.
But that according to the CBN numbers, that program disbursed about 1 trillion naira in 7 years.
Over 10 years.
If you divide that would be a little bit over 100 billion. Per year. 100 billion. When you dollarize it, then that becomes now about in today's rate. Though the Anchor program was when naira was about 300 and something. So that would be about 35 million. Dollars. So you are using $35 million to want to change a $100 billion industry. But nobody has really thought about it this way. That are we really doing enough? But and truth be told, the government cannot do it. It has to. The government must strengthen those institutions that they've put in place, especially around the financing side. Kudos to the efforts of the CBN. Those things, their efforts now is it done well? So I don't think we should throw the baby and the bathwater away. We should just try and look at what went wrong. How can we improve it and make it better?
It's funny you have to mention that, because I was thinking on my own part that Nigeria as a whole is still very much not, should I say, heavily invested in by private companies. This is squarely because of some of the attendant risks involved in investing in a country that has security issues and all those issues. So for me, I would expect that government still has to take that major share of investing in agriculture, because then that's the only way I think they have that kind of financial muscle. At least, even if you're not going to spread out all of your resources, you could particularly create a particular niche where you can make the most impact. Okay, now looking at that, I know that government officials, the vice president was also at a particular function in the United States where they were trying to woo investors into the agricultural sector here in Nigeria. Mechanized farming was also mentioned. And when you talk about this country, you talk about Malaysia, Indonesia, they are very heavy in mechanized farming, unlike what we have. And I think latest news, I think also yesterday or so, they were actually, John Deere is a top American company for tractors, the heavy machinery. They're actually planning on creating an assembly plant here in Nigeria. Now, if you look at that, mechanization, do you see that as a viable means? Really, is that what is missing in the link of boosting the agricultural sector? Do you think if they bring in these machineries, these are going to ultimately change the face of agricultural production in Nigeria? Or don't you think we should have our own homegrown solutions rather than waiting for?
Well, so mechanization is mechanization. It is adding mechanical power to enhance what we could have done with our physical manual labor. So it will always be welcome.
Okay.
And it will always improve productivity and efficiency, right? But mechanization cannot be the silver bullet, that just solves all the problems. There are several other key factors. For me, things like knowledge.
Okay.
Knowledge is an important component that we need to really take a look at, and knowledge will be homegrown knowledge.
Okay. Yes.
How do we differentiate between biases, like idiosyncrasies, like things that people sentiment and mindset that are not science based,
exactly.
but people still put too much into their production. And I've had serious experiences.
Okay. Can you give an example?
For instance, in one of our farms in Niger State, I believe, the farmers, because we do outgrower systems, which is where you are able to give farmers support so that they can produce, and then you offtake from them. The farmers refused mechanization. And honestly, we just didn't know why. But if you
refused, rejected, you bringing all
they said if they mechanize, or when they mechanize, their crop yield will be bad.
Oh, okay.
And you can maybe like 70 years ago, maybe somebody brought tractor.
Something, okay.
And
then
there was a pest infestation at the same time. So they probably thought
linked it
and the person forgot to say that it was pest, but maybe tractor was the new thing that was introduced. So you have those kind of things, But of course, tractorization, our tractorization, the tractor density in Nigeria is abysmal. It's
totally
very little. I think it's
less than par.
It is it's 27 to 1,000 hectares, I believe. Whereas the 27 horsepower to 1,000 hectares, whereas it should be about
maybe
150 hectares or 170, 250 hectares to 1,000 hectares. So it is bad. So of course, John Day, and I know the government has been making a lot of effort. There's something called the Green Imperative Program, which was started by the last administration. It is meant to bring a lot of tractors, tropicalized tractors from Brazil and other places that can really work, and are also affordable.
Exactly.
But beyond tractors, there are other components of mechanization. So when we think mechanization, we think tractors. Like irrigation is mechanization. And our irrigation is abysmal as well, because we are irrigating only 0.9% of our arable land,
which is what makes the food problem even more dire, because once it's no longer rainy season, then
correct. So we most of our staples are like 4 months. And the productivity is a function of land and to a large extent, more amount of the period that you can plant, which is really dictated by moisture, water. So if you are restricted to rainfall, especially in the north, which is just about 4 months, and the water, the moisture that supports your plant does not have to be water from heaven. It could be water from your Ragoli's water. You know as much as this water. So if we irrigate, we can produce 2x, 3x of what we are producing on the same land, because then you can move from one cycle to three cycles if you are very efficient.
Exactly.
And those are one of the underlying factors that make countries like Thailand and all that produce so much more in rice and cereals.
I mean, I hope we will get there someday. I hope so, because I'm already seeing some of the little bit of inputs in that regard. But I want to just mention one thing. It's one thing for the technology, it's another thing for manpower. We mentioned, how do we get the young people interested in this? Because even that is, funny enough, it's an issue even in developed societies in America. People are actually even lamenting that a lot of young people are not, taken to farming. But in Nigeria, Africa generally, this is something that is very, 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 it's a big issue. The youths are the leaders of tomorrow. How do we get them to leave the TikTok videos and social media and Facebook to focus on something that can actually create wealth for themselves as well as for the country. Because agriculture, when you have that stereotypical image of a farmer in rags with hoe, it doesn't look appealing for the young people, especially those who are in school. So how do we actually get them to be very interested? What innovative ideas, technological, aids, assistance, whatever, especially with what your company is doing, can we actually get these young people on board?
Yeah, but I think a lot of young people make a lot of money on TikTok as well. So,
Yes,
maybe they should not. Maybe they should not leave TikTok. Maybe they should apply TikTok to agriculture.
Okay. Like you say, potato twerking.
I see how. Right. So
right.
yeah. I mean, like today, the profile of the average Nigerian farmer is about a 43-year-old that has primary education or less, and when that is the profile of your producer, it is not it is difficult for them to produce at optimal numbers. And I read a study on agriculture in sub-Saharan Africa, and a particular segment called the medium holder segment.
Okay.
And this typical profile of the farmer, they are small holders and subsistence. In fact, there's something called subsistence, which is a little bit lower than small holder, which is just
feeding themselves
to eat and to sustain themselves. And if you look at the medium holders, it is basically young people and maybe not all young, but young people will still make a good portion of
within the medium holder category.
Correct.
So I guess that's the more tech-driven category.
Well, maybe I don't want to ascribe it to tech. The major factor here is that they believe that it can be profitable.
Okay.
So the young people, no matter they or anybody would hardly, except you are going into the military. Would hardly go into anything for patriotism.
Yes, exactly.
They would most likely look, can this sustain me? Do I have an economic option from this practice?
True.
Will it be viable? So like you rightly said, if the projection to them is somebody that is tattered, carrying a hole, it doesn't create a very good picture. And even beyond that, I believe that the 120,000 young people that are in Nigerian universities studying agriculture as a major, and that's from NUC. I'm sure they are not telling them in their schools that agriculture is bad. Of course, they can be excited, but it has to be. Somebody must also sell to them beyond the theoretical knowledge a path to economic viability and success, for them. And
which is where I think that your company comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is, if you look at the numbers, for maybe a 5-hectare farm of rice or maize, at today's prices, it outcompetes most of the jobs that you can get there. Most of the white collar jobs, because let's do the math. If you say maize, for example, right, and you are a young, smart person that is doing the thing the way it should be done, then you can have as much as 4-5 tons of maize yield on your farm. 4 times 5, that's on a 4 times 5, that's 25. 20. And today's, at some point, the price of maize was at about 500,000 naira to ton.
Okay.
And if you multiply that by 20, that's 5 million. Is it 5 million or 10 million? 10 million. That's 10 million. And if you do it 2 times in a year, that's 20 million. How many people are earning 20 million? I don't earn 20 million.
Are you sure?
A salary. So those are the kind of stories, narratives broken down that we need to tell young people that, look, this is viable, this is economical. And there's also, like in the US, there's something called the Beginner Farmer Program.
Okay.
I think, for example, there should be a path, a deliberate and intentional path to make sure that people that have studied agriculture in the universities that have an appreciation, the government should move them. For those that are interested, okay, you've studied well, maybe you have a 2-1, we know you are serious, we can trust you. You're not like Femi that does not have 2-1. We can trust you. So you've demonstrated capacity, you've demonstrated leadership, you've demonstrated drive and seriousness and responsibility, which are baked into what we are measuring when you're in school.
Exactly.
We believe that that kind of person should be able to get a 10 million, 20 million startup grant from the government. And before you know it, if you are able to move maybe 50% of the bulk in the school, because every year, if you have 120,000 people in the school, that means for a 5-year course, that means about a fifth of them will graduate in a year. So you can have about 20,000 people that are going into that program. In 20 years, you probably have an army of people that are producing optimally for the country, and we won't have all this problem. And they are also the ones that best support smallholder farmers.
True.
So just to summarize, so far we've spoken about some of the issues we face in Nigeria, lack of knowledge, people not really participating in what they don't understand. We've spoken about developing that agricultural foundation as a nation, not just the government. So basically a collaboration between private individuals and the government to put those systems in place. And this would also help to encourage more young people being able to see role models and people that they can let them know that agriculture is the viable option. So we also spoke a lot about AgroMall, but just to close off, I wanted to know where do you see AgroMall in the next 5 to 10 years? Because personally, I feel like if we had maybe 50 companies or 50 AgroMalls in Nigeria, I really feel like more people will be feeling an impact. So because just the constant innovation, just having to witness that is amazing. So I'm just wondering where you see your company going
in 10 years.
10 years. So this in answering this question, I must also reiterate that AgroMall's success stems on the success of people, right? Which is the farmer and all the participants in the agricultural value chain, like maybe the tractor owner, the guys that owns a logistic company for agriculture, the warehouse. And the way we've designed ourselves is to be able to integrate the ecosystem and support people so that they are able to take agriculture as a viable economic option and also be prosperous around it. In 10 years, I believe I would have done what God sent me to come and do.
Still young now.
If we are able to reach, if and I have a number to it, I think if we're able to drive the young, educated people that are involved in agriculture to about 2 million people in Nigeria, and supporting them, what I would translate to is, on the average, each of those guys may support about 10 smallholder farmers, in outdoor schemes, and that means that indirectly we are supporting about 20 million farmers, and what they will be produced with information, with community, with knowledge, both digital and physical, with financial services, markets, productivity enhancing tools that they are able to produce optimally, right? With each of them owning maybe 20 to 50 hectares of land, or its equivalent in other non-crop value chain. Then I believe that's where we're headed, and honestly, I believe it can be done.
from what is the trajectory, it seems you're in the right direction.
Yeah, same.
Honestly speaking. Thank you. I mean, it's really an invaluable time with none other than the CEO and the AgroMall. I just want to ask on a personal note, how do you unwind? How do you relax? Because I see you like a very busy. I see you like a I see you like a thinker. Like you always solutions tech. This. How do you? Is that how you unwind? How do you unwind? Really, I want to know.
Yeah, you can. There was a time that I just realized that I always think.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that maybe it's my thing.
Okay.
But it's also not my thing. So going to unwinding.
Okay.
And again, trust me, I believe human beings we are endowed with different things.
Yes.
Being a thinker does not mean that I don't need an executor.
True.
I could visualize. True. I have vision. In fact, I didn't know that I had all of those things. I had to begin to trust myself that this is me. But I also understand that I need other people, teams and all of that. That said, I unwind. I'm a mountain climber.
Okay.
So this year I've climbed Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
I was going to climb Mount Fiji, but I had a scheduling Mount Fiji in Japan.
Yes.
I'm looking to climb the 7 summits, which is the peaks of each continent.
Himalaya.
Wow.
I don't know if I will be able to go to Everest, but at least I'll do the base camp, which is a little bit lower than Kili. I also run, so I also given myself a target to run the Abbott series, which is the elite marathon across the world, starting with New York City Marathon.
Wow.
Yeah.
What I mean, I think. And your hobby is mountain climbing. I can now see you trying to solve those problems at the mountains, Nigerian mountains in agriculture. Good luck to you, sir. I think you need all the stress out. Wow. So, gentlemen, ladies, everybody, it's been a fantastic time. Like I said earlier, it's always an eye-opener when you're here with us on the show. Uzoma, you agree with me that this was very, very
100%.
Yeah.
This has been incredible. I've learned so much. Very inspiring as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for your time. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much, Mr. Femi Adeniyi, CEO and founder of AgroMall, who is revolutionizing the
face of agriculture in Nigeria, in Africa. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to follow us on the Agric Junction on Instagram and the Junction on LinkedIn, Twitter, and I think that's it.